Hello there everyone, welcome to this video. It's a tutorial where I show off a new geometry nodes system. And it's one that makes cornrow hair, right? And this one was actually a request by one of you. Ruby, this one's for you. And it did give me a little bit of issues, a little bit of trouble, but in the end I got it to work quite nicely. So this is something you can download completely for free. You can use it for whatever you want. It's very customizable, very procedural, and it generates a very nice variable rows of cornrow with the nice connections as well that go into a ponytail. I hope this is what you mean. Now, I checked out a lot of reference images, how cornrow actually looks, and it is very interesting. I have no clue how this is done in real life. Like how do they even add those hairs into the braids while the braid is still going on? I'm not sure, but I did make it in Blender. So with geometry nodes, it was quite interesting to do. Right, so let's get into Blender. How does it work? Well, I got some modifiers going on here, some geometry node setups. A few of those are Blender 3.5 assets, and I have edited one of them to actually turn this into a ponytail, add the little ribbon on the end, and actually add those rows as well, right? So the cornrow hair basically comes from the entire scalp into a single braid, right? So we've got different sizes here, the thicker one and a smaller one on the side. I thought that would look cool, and I really think it does. But you can make whatever, and it's very easy to set up. Right, so let me disable all of these and we'll just walk through each of those. There we go, this one as well. So there are two different hair systems. There we go. All right, so this is all there is to it. 7 hair strands, and it will turn it into what you just saw. Okay, so the way to do this, and I could just show this to you. I've got one additional connection geometry. I will explain that as well. Right, so let's just basically try to get into this together. So this is our face without the eyeball this time, it's fine. So if you want to get started, it is quite easy. You select your mesh and all you need to do is make some kind of a hair system or like that on the left, right? So let's do that. Let's go to Shift A, curve, and let's hit an empty hair. Let's go to solid view, and I'm going to twist this over to sculpt mode, all right? And I'm working with, what scale are we working on the head? These dimensions, it may be nice for you to incorporate the same dimensions. I'm not sure how stable it is at very low scales, for example. So keep that in mind. And now we can just go to the hair system and let's go to sculpt mode. Let's add a few of those hairs. I'm not going to make it as complicated as this one. I'm just going to add like let's do 3 strands or something like that, right? 3 strands, and let's make sure that our curve shape is nice. We've got 2 meters and 16 points. I'm going to set this to 3, and 16 points is fine actually. Let's add 1 in the middle there, and 1 on the side, 1 on the side. Right, this is all that I'm going to do. And we can just now comb this in the shape we want to have it at. Right, so pretty much at the same shape that I have here on the left. Works nicely. And get this as close to the actual scalp as you can. Check it out in top view as well. Right, I'm just gonna sculpt this right into place, at least somewhat into the right place. There we go. Let's check side view, and I'm gonna move around a little bit just to make this all nice and close to my actual character. Right, because those cornrows are nice and close to your scalp as well. They are pretty much shrink wrap on the scalp, it seems like. And there we go. Now I'm just gonna make a little bit of a ponytail to help out my system, right? It's always nice to have this already and the best shape that you can pretty much get it. So Blender knows what you're trying to do, right? That's nice. Let's go side view, and there we go. I think this is something that we can already work with. Make sure this isn't really intersecting in the skin. That may result in some issues later on. Let's move that out a little bit. There we go. This one as well. There we go. This is looking quite decent. Let's go to object mode, and we have the geometry nodes we need right here. Right, now the best way to add this to your own object is to have your own object and the head that you downloaded from me in the same file, right? So append the head model into your own, or just move your own model into the head blend file. If you append the head, the geometry nodes and the materials will come with it as well, which is just perfect, right? It just saves a lot of trouble. Hold Shift, left click on the other one, Ctrl L, and we can just hit copy modifiers. There we go. Now there's some stuff that we need to change. Open up that first one. It's gonna shrink wrap our model. All right, it's gonna shrink wrap the hair around our model, and we need this to be the second head, so your own model. And actually, we're working in the wrong one right now. Shrink wrap this on the head. There we go. And then we can open the second one. We've got the hair object, which basically means it's gonna snap the connections of our hair, right? The new connections for the cornrow hair. It's gonna snap it to the head. So what I did actually was I created an additional model of the head. It's this one. And the thing I changed was just the ear, because it got very close to the ear on this left one, right? You can see it quite close, and it snapped some hairs to the ear, which is weird because there's no hair coming out of the actual ear, okay? So that's the only thing that I really just did, just to have some control on where it's gonna snap to the surface, right? So that is just a second model that we won't be seeing, but we just use for that snapping. Beautiful. Right, so that is something we have to add now as well. So we've got the head connections for this head. There we go. And we can actually enable this one and see what happens there. So it basically adds a few curves with an offset to the left and right based on the normals of the head. And it snaps the top part to your ponytail and the back part to your face, right? To your skull. Beautiful. To your objects, to your hair objects. And then you have a ponytail at the back there, and it adds a little band there as well. And let's walk through the settings, because this is the geometry node settings system that I really changed as well. All right, so we've got a few options. We've got the connection amount. It's the first one that I added myself, and it basically means how many of those connections you want. You can really just crank these down, crank these up, and that all depends on how many of these additional connections you want on the scalp, right? How many connections are going into that braid, pretty much. And that is just, well, personal preference, I guess. And then we've got this starting position of those connections as well. They won't start right away. So we can just control where it starts and where it ends with the next one as well, right? Start position, end position. They'll basically define how far along those connections will go. How far up to that ponytail is something you can control yourself. Now we can also control the connection distance, right? From how far apart those hairs are going into the braid. So you can see if I increase this, those connections are going to be further apart. If I decrease this, they're going to be closer to the actual braid. And that will also depend on how thick you want your braid to be. All right. Now we've got the ponytail start position. Basically defines at which points your curves are going to really clump together into that ponytail. So we can crank this up, crank this down, and it will, you can see it pretty much snaps together at different positions. So you can just play around with that, see what works best for you. We've got the tie position as well. You can move this down and up on the curve, depending on where you really want your position of the ponytail to be. And then we just have some settings for the ponytail scale. All depends on how your hair turns out, right? Sometimes you need a bigger one, sometimes a smaller one. You can all change it. Beautiful. Now that is the settings that we have here. Of course, we have the standard clumping settings as well. I have these all turned off because I wanted to control it myself with the geometry nodes, so leave those off. And then we've got the duplicate hairs. I've got this at a very high amount. Let's set this down to 300 for now. Depends on your computer what it can handle, of course. And you can see this just adds a lot of hairs here. All right, so we just have some additional hairs there on those connection parts and in the actual braids as well. All right, now what you have to know is that your viewport will always look different than the rendered view in geometry nodes, the hair systems. If we go to the rendered view, we can see that those curves have much more resolution. So there's just a little bit more representative of what it's actually going to look like. All right, so let's stay in rendered view for now. Go to the side, let's see what we can do. All right, so we've got the duplicate hairs. The main thing that is really important here is the radius. All right, the radius of the duplicate is going to define how pretty much how far those connecting hairs can pretty much go outwards, distribute. All right, so that also means that it is connected to your braid thickness. Right, that is important. Let's go to the next one, the braid hair curves. That's gonna braid our hair, of course. Enable that. And that is basically the initial system, right? The initial system of the Blender 3.5 assets, but I made some changes to it. Right, I made some changes to this one, and actually I will rename this for you guys so you don't confuse it with the Blender one. Braid hair curves, and I'm just gonna name this Cornrows. Beautiful. Right, so what I changed here was those side hairs, right, the connection parts, they shouldn't really go into the braids as well, which is something that's quite difficult. We have this geometry node after the actual clumping one that adds the connections, which means the braid is gonna be applied to all curves, so also these connections, so I had to do some magic in there, so that prevents it, but that also means that we've got a little bit of control there, right? For example, I think the only one that we added is the connection braiding, right? Which means how much our connecting hairs are going to braid together with the actual braid. So if I increase this, you can see that they're going to be braiding more, right? So that really means that you can already turn it into pretty much a starting braid before it's even in the actual braid. And that just depends on, you know, personal preference, I guess, what you're looking for. And then we can close this down. We are going to attach it to a surface. Make sure you have the right surface selected there. So head connections, I think it's the first one. There we go. Works nicely like this. It's all connected to our scalp now, which is something that is quite, well, satisfying, I'd say. Now let's open up the next one. This is basically the hair density. It's the default Blender one. I didn't change it at all. So we can enable that. It will all get a nice and hairy, smaller, thin. And we can now enable the frizz hair. Frizz hair, the only reason I added this is because I wanted this to move a little bit outwards on those endpoints, which is basically what it does as well. All right, we can maybe even get that shape a little bit sooner. So 0.9 or something like that. So it's gonna really just move those points out a little bit better. All right, there we go. Now you know the settings. You know how to make it. I've got the materials set up. We can just link that to the other one as well. Link materials. There we go. And now it's just a matter of adding some more density, for example, 500. Beautiful. Now, let's change a little bit more of the settings. Braid hair curves. I can imagine you want to control the braid radius, the density, and pretty much how far those connections are going to reach to the side as well. So what I can do is just decrease my radius of the braid, let's say 0.1. They're going to get really much thinner. And then all we have to do is go to our clump hair section and adding the connection part. And we can just set that distance, connection distance, to a lower amount. Let's say 0.1. And they're just going to move it a little bit closer to the actual braid as well. Now, if you want these connections to be further distributed, further apart, or you want them to be closer together, what you can change is the duplicate hair curves. You can change the radius of that. So if I set this to 0.1, you can see they're going to be moving further away and a little bit more to the sides as well. Where if I set this to 0.05, it's really going to be more clumped together in that section, right? So that really depends on what you're looking for as well. So let's set that radius back to 0.75. There we go. I quite like to have a little bit of a gap there in between. I just like seeing it, right? So this is very easy to actually just get away with, right? And we can see the starting positions looking nice as well. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now we even have some braid thickness that starts nice and thin and then gets thicker in the end. That's also something I added in there. So you can go really crazy with this system and get it to your own liking. You can add a new system on there with the same geometry nodes, change the thickness to get, for example, that smaller braid that I had in here. I'm gonna enable that real quick. and on the thicker one as well. There we go. Beautiful. So this is just two different hair systems, one with thick hair and one with a little bit of thinner hair. All right, so that is pretty much how you can customize this entire process, which is just amazing in my opinion. I finally am able to actually create some braided, now even cornrow hair. I love working with the geometry nodes with the new system, really getting into it and even changing some of the old assets, some of the Blender 3.5 assets, just customizing them to what we need ourselves. Alright, so I hope that is of use to you. You can download this for free on my Gumroad. Please, if the video was useful to you, if you liked it, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, maybe even tick that little bell icon so you're up to date on whenever I upload my stuff. I would appreciate any one of those. It will make me incredibly happy as well. And have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.